Hi, this is Colleen with Chats with Colleen, and we're so glad that you're here joining us for our biweekly podcast edition. This week, our interview is going to be with Madelynn Markle. She is with Markle Property Management. She is a local property manager in the Orlando area, and she has vast experience with all types of properties. And she has a lot of experience with other companies that she's worked for until she went out to work on her own. And she also has a secret talent. Not only being the mom of three young kids, she also is a bra fitter. She used to work at a store and measured people for their correct bra sizes. And I told her I never actually had that done. So, side note, I'm going to have to hook up with her and get that done. But I think that's a really great talent. She's really sincere, really humble, and I really appreciated her time to explain to us the myths of property management and why people may think it's a ripoff and why they don't need it and why they probably do need it. So please be sure to tune in and also like and share our podcast. It helps us out so much. And also, if you would like to be on as a guest, please reach out and enjoy the show. Thank you. This is Colleen with Chats with Colleen, and we're so glad that you're here joining me. Today, we are with Madelynn Markle with Markle Management, and she's a property manager. So we're going to go over some questions here that I've got burning questions, and I know a lot of people do too. So I wanted to ask you, what got you into property management?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. And, we'll get right into it. I start with property management. I didn't even know it was a field that existed or a lane that existed in order to help residents at all. I was just a student at UCF getting close to graduation, and they had a college career fair. And a teacher said that she would give us credit for not being in class if we went. So, so I went and, there were a lot of booths. I talked to a lot of people. I had always had a kind of slight interest in real estate, and my mom growing up always told me it was a great license to have. It's not very difficult, and just you can do a lot with it. So I talked to a lot of booths there, and there was a company, a property management company that had a booth there. I talked to them. We really kind of hit it off there at the booth. And then afterwards, all these companies will send you, either job offers or job listings to apply. And so many of them were, at that time back then, graduating making 50,000 a year was like, you've made it. And so all these companies were like 50,000 a year, 50,000 a year. And then when you get the job offer, they're like, well, really, it's $9 an hour. And if you hit every goal in your first month, then you'll get the opportunity to make $10 an hour. And then if you meet every goal, then you'll, unlock a key that will maybe get you to the possibility to make 50,000. It was just really inauthentic. And the property management company that I met with, they sent a listing that said, look, it's going to be really hard work, but you're going to learn a lot. We're going to have fun doing it. And I just really liked the authenticity of it. It wasn't like you're going to make all the money and do no work, which is what all these other companies were kind of saying. They were like, it's hard work, which it was, but that's kind of how I got my introduction. And I interviewed with them, and the great Ashley Herring, she was one of the managers in on that interview. And we just really, really hit it off, and they hired me on as an intern. And then when I graduated, they hired me on full time. And that's how I kind of opened that door.
Wow. And so prior to property management, you were in school, but had you had any other jobs other than that?
Lots of jobs, no real like career. Like you said, I was still in school, but I had done a lot of retail work.
Uh-huh.
So I worked for a children's shoe store down in South Florida. During college, I worked for like a juniors clothing store, kind of like a Forever 21 type of place. And then my last job before getting into property management was at Victoria's Secret. I was the bra fitting specialist at Victoria's Secret, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, I need to
Yeah.
come see you. I've never been fitted for
Oh, listen,
bras.
I got you. I can still, I still have my
That could be a
superpowers.
side hustle. Yeah,
Yeah, for real. I
that's a
said the
talent.
first property management company that I worked at, I was still working at Victoria's Secret when I started as an intern. And so everyone got fitted. All the girls got fitted for me too.
That's like a hidden talent. That's awesome.
Yes.
So you mentioned you did an internship and then you got hired. So that was at
Yeah.
another property management company.
Yeah, that was a different company. A company they hired me on when I was still in school as an intern, and then when I graduated, they offered me full time, which I took.
Got it. And then how many management companies have you worked for?
So I worked with three prior to starting our own. The first one was in, Central Florida, Orlando area. And that portfolio, it was mostly single family homes. And then they did what they called boutique multifamily, which was like 45 units and under apartment communities. So like smaller apartment communities. And that was the bulk of my portfolio was those small apartment communities. And then the owner of those apartment communities purchased a regular, like, 80 to 100 unit building in Gainesville. And so they transferred me to Gainesville to manage that. That owner kind of flew up in Gainesville and he bought a bunch in that area and started his own management company. So asked me to come over as the regional for his management company. And then I took a whack at student housing, which I didn't very much like at all.
Yeah, I think student housing would be very difficult. There's like a lot of babysitting probably.
It's a lot of babysitting, and I thought I wasn't too far in age at that time from them, but it was too far in age. It was a lot of babysitting. It was a lot of parents calling in on behalf of their kids, yelling on behalf of their kids
Oh,
because
yeah.
their child had finals and couldn't, whatever. I'm not a huge fan of student housing.
Right, right. I wouldn't think so either. So when you opened your own management company, why did you decide to do that?
So, my husband we were living, a little bit north of Gainesville, working there. And then my husband got a job offer back in Central Florida. We had lived in Orlando for many years, but so he got a job offer back in Central Florida. So, I was just looking for other companies here. I was pregnant with our second baby and interviewed at a lot of places, met with a lot of great people, and all the offers that I got just by a lot of them were in Orlando. We kind of live like an hour from Orlando. A lot of the companies and properties that are gonna pay good money are, a bulkier place than where we live. So by after the time commuting, the cost commuting with tolls, and starting with a new company, the pay just didn't make sense, and having to leave my now newborn baby. So we just, decided to start our own to have that flexibility of schedule. And the last company that I worked for, I used all my PTO within the first 2 months, which was from sick children. So we had a
Yeah.
second one on the way. We had been talking about it for a while and just decided to make it happen. And it's been, really a great blessing, especially now with a third. Just, mostly don't have to worry about PTO and get to be around the kids a lot more.
Wow. So
Yeah.
did you work from home, like mostly with your admin stuff, and then maybe you have to go to properties to meet people, etc.?
Yeah, so when I started in property management, it was a whole different world. Most everything was in person. You did in person tours at the property, and then they came to the office to read over the lease and sign the lease with you. And you met clients at the office. People picked up keys from the office. Everything was just, there was a space for people to come. Especially when I transferred over to multifamily, there's the main leasing office everyone comes to, and everything's worked out of there. But now so much, post COVID, so much has turned to remote, which was a big benefit for us starting the company, was the ability to have so much remote access. And for one of the biggest thing that's changed is self-guided tours. So now instead of meeting people all over all of Central Florida, you have a tour in one city at 10 a.m. and then an hour away at 10 or 11:30 you have another tour, and just traveling all over the place. Now we have self-guided tour systems where you don't have to be there. So much as DocuSign or e-signatures online. We still do like to meet our clients at the properties when we're doing, listing appointments, and like to see the property in person, but so much has moved to remote.
Oh, that makes it convenient. Nice.
So so,
Perfect.
so convenient.
Yeah. And to become a property manager and open your own, firm for that, what licenses do you need to do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so to open, the brokerage, to open the brokerage, I needed a broker's license. So I have the broker's license, and then For the most part, property managers need a real estate license. There's some companies that don't require it and you just don't do certain parts of the business, but we require it. So we have, real estate like broker's license. That's pretty much all that's needed for property management. There's a lot of credentials you can get, like certified property manager, certified residential property manager, certified apartment manager, all these. But any company that I worked for didn't require it or value it. So I never sought those out. We just have, the broker's license, real estate license, and then also a realtor. So, we can do sales and have access to the MLS and all of that.
Well, that's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when dealing with a landlord, because, I do insurance, so I deal with lots of clients and, clientele who own rental properties, and a lot of them, what they call self-manage, or, they think
Yes.
they are. Why would you say that a landlord or any property owner that rents out any part of it should hire a property manager to help them?
Yeah. So there's just so much liability involved and so many laws surrounding property management, so many laws that are new and changing. And if that's not your day job, it's just so hard to stay on top of. I mean, we're constantly going to, law seminars or just, having updates, nationwide updates or statewide updates about changing laws. There's constant legislation going on, and it's a lot to stay on top of, and that can cause a lot of liability for the owner. That can turn into a lot of lawsuits for the owner. And so we're kind of the intermediary that can help them out throughout that process. It's also hard to know, what your home is valued, and we see both sides of the spectrum. So a lot of people are like, my home is wonderful and I need $1 million in rent a month, and I believe it's worth that. And when you tell them it's worth $2,000, that that's a shock to them. Or we have a lot of people that say, okay, well, in order to meet my monthly bills, my mortgage and property taxes and insurance that I have on this home, I need to make X amount of dollars. And they buy this property with the intent to rent it out, and it doesn't rent for that much. So we have a good idea of the market. We also see the other side of that. We've had owners that say, okay, I want to get 2,000 for this, and we're able to get 3,000 for it. So just having that knowledge of the market. But I would say the biggest thing is just liability. There's so much that can go wrong. And, we are able to kind of guide people through those waters.
And I see it, yeah, every day, especially nowadays. It's getting worse and worse, but it's the main thing. They don't know like the laws and stuff, I would say too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's just, in an eviction, for instance, there's specific notices that have to be posted, and there's specific notices that have to be posted in specific counties. And if you get anything wrong on those notices, well, now the notice is void, and, you have to start over. And now people are living in there longer, not paying rent. And so that's something we get a lot is owner. I apologize if you hear children screaming in the
If you
background.
need to go hear him, I hear the
No,
baby.
it's just my son's just wild, and he'll go in his room and not go to sleep right away, but he just happy screams. And if you hear that, I apologize.
Oh, it's okay.
But
He's having a good time. Good for
yeah,
him.
he's
Yes.
but yeah, that's one we get a lot. A lot of people will want to sign us on when they're at the point where their tenant has to go to eviction. And they'll say, oh, I posted this notice. If you could just, I don't have an attorney. If you could just file the eviction. And then we look over the notice, and I'm like, I don't know where you got this notice, but this is all wrong, and kind of have to start from scratch. And we, obviously take precautions for people to not get to that, to not get to the eviction spot. And so, yeah, that's a big thing that we see is people trying to sign us on during an eviction, and we could have helped them far beyond, far before that point.
Yeah, that's what I see too. And so, what would you think is like the biggest misconception that most people have about property managers and that, probably bothers you? A lot of what you
So I
think.
would I would say the biggest is probably just that they're not needed because, for all those instances I just shared, we just signed on an owner, and we had done lease onlys for him in the past, where we'll do lease only. So if someone says, we want to self manage, but we don't have the marketing skills, can you market the property, find a tenant, and then we'll take it from there. We're happy to do that. And we were introduced with him and met with him last year. We did the lease only for his property. And then recently he said, hey, that property is coming up again. Also, he has a building with 3 units. He's like, none of those tenants have paid rent. And I can't tell you how long. I have no record of their past payments. And so I brought up the conversation of management again. And, that's stuff we can help you with. And again, with eviction, in order to send an eviction, you need a ledger that shows all of their charges and what they've paid. And that's not something a lot of people do themselves, is have kind of those accounts. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that property managers aren't needed or don't do much. They're just collecting a paycheck, but there's so much that we do. One, to secure a good tenant, to make sure they're following the rule, and not just payment rules, but just following the rules in general of your home, making sure that your home is upkept and they're not damaging it and all of that. So that's probably the biggest one, just that they're not needed or don't do much.
Yeah, I think it's probably true, and people say the same thing about insurance agents. I can just write my policies online. And I'm like, I'm sure you can, but do you understand it? Do you know what you're getting? Do you understand the terminology? And then do you have anybody to blame for anything? No, you can just blame yourself.
Yes. Yeah, and I think the biggest thing in any of these specialized fields is just having someone to kind of hold your hand and walk you through it. Because obviously there's so much information online. There's also so much misinformation online, and there's so many ways to guide you incorrectly if you're just reading articles. But to just have someone hold your hand through the process and kind of take on that weight for you, property management, insurance, whatever it may be. I think that, also definitely saves you some stress, right?
Saves you
Like you
time
said,
and stress. Yeah.
yeah. Or like you said, have
Exactly.
someone to blame.
Have somebody to blame. So there you go. But I say the same thing to people. I always give them like tips, when I do presentations and stuff about rental properties or properties that you own that you don't live in, or even if you live in it, like you need to do a checklist, like take pictures of it a couple times per year, especially if
Yes.
it's rented, like go in there, like how many times do these landlords tell me, oh, I don't check the AC because the client or the tenant didn't tell me that they're having a problem with it, but you still need
Yeah.
to maintain it because you don't know if they're changing the filters. You don't know
Oh
what
my
it looks like.
gosh.
And then it may stop working, when it's been like having an issue for a while.
Yeah.
And then it could be cost you more money, or there could be damage in the house. And I think a
100%.
lot of people don't do it. They're like, no news is good news. It's
Yeah.
not always the case.
Yes, no, 100%. And I know, just with insurance, I'll say I've had the same car insurance person since before I even got a car. I inherited her from my mother, but, for my very first car, and anytime I have to deal with anything with car insurance, just having that person that I've known for all of these years, it makes it so much less stressful and such like just a more positive experience. It's not like, oh no, what am I going to do? It's, oh my God, I'm just going to call her. I've known her. She
Yeah, I'll
knows
just
me.
call her and say, okay, like the guy who you said he has a 3 unit and people haven't been paying rent. He doesn't know how
Yeah.
long. Well,
Yeah.
he's just giving away his property like for free, and he has no
Yeah.
idea like what's going on there. And those people obviously are just taking advantage of the
Yeah.
situation. All three of
Yeah.
them. So that's crazy. He really needs your help. I really hope he signs a management agreement.
No, he did. And honestly, it's been so much fun helping him, because situations like that, where things were not properly managed before, you can really come in and make a big difference, and not just a big difference for the property itself, but for the owners, take that stress off of them. And that is a highlight for us, being able to kind of turn this situation from a nightmare into a positive situation for the owner.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there's a lot of rules and laws and stuff with being a property manager. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like a code of conducts or something that you were supposed to follow. Is there anything along those lines? I'm assuming.
Yes, no, for sure. Definitely for property managers, the biggest thing is just following fair housing guidelines.
Mhm.
And the biggest thing there is just not discriminating, race, gender, ethnicity, and, all of the above, not discriminating. Being a realtor, there's also, which includes fair housing guidelines, but there's also just a complete code of ethics that we have to follow. But again, for property managers, the biggest thing is just not discriminating. And one big thing that kind of comes into just communication a lot is something called steering. So you can't steer people to or away from a property. So you can't say, I think this property would be great for you because you have kids and it's such, all the people there have kids, or, oh, you don't have kids, so this would be great for you because it's a really quiet neighborhood. Or you can't say that it's a safe neighborhood or a dangerous neighborhood. So you can't kind of like push people to or away. And, that gets tricky on tours because people ask all the time, is this a safe neighborhood? Or, especially like I said, in student housing or just working in Gainesville, it's a big student community. Parents all the time are like, is this safe? Is this good? Or is it a lot of students here? And you
Oh,
can't.
that's got to be tough. I would probably be like, oh, and then like you said, oh, this is great for you. You could, I don't know, I guess you could maybe help them make a list themselves of like the pros and cons of each property. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And you just kind of have to say, like with crime, you have to say, oh, you have to look up the criminal statistics. I remember, you can't say anything, but in Gainesville, I worked at a property that wasn't a student housing property. A lot of students there because it is Gainesville, but some people, we would get a lot of like grad students, and they're not looking to live in an undergrad kegger party community. And so they would ask me like, oh, what's the population? Is it a lot of, first year students, or is it a lot of like professionals? And I'm like, I can't answer. But then I would see, a guy in his 40s walking his dog, and I would wait like, hey, so they knew it's not all students, even though I can't say anything about that. But yeah, so basically, just no discrimination. And then one thing that, nothing I've run into or seen from any specific properties or companies that I worked with, but just something kind of from the past, is people would try and put, like, let's say in an apartment community, they want to put all the people with babies over on one side of the community because the babies are going to cry and they're going to be loud, and they're only going to bother people with other babies, and they're not going to bother the single people or the people that don't have kids who don't have to worry about it. And we're going to put all the people with dogs over here, and we're going to put all the teenagers or 18, 19-year-olds over here, or different ethnicities, we're going to put them all over here because they'll be friends. And even if it is something good natured of, oh, the 18-year-olds, they're going to want to be together, the people with families, they're going to want to be together, that way they'll meet other families. Even if it's kind of good natured like that, that's still against the law and against fair housing, and you can't kind of compartmentalize, and because it's all considered discrimination.
So it's just whatever's available or whatever they pick. Like if they wanted, top floor, 2-bedroom
Yeah.
apartment, you would
Yeah,
just
and you can't
whatever,
help them in the exactly. Yeah, what are
just
your
go on what's available
preferences?
and let them pick.
Exactly.
Wow. Have you run into anything scary being a property manager?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I'll give you two kind of big examples. The first one is more like general, just when it was working in an office setting, especially at those apartment communities. Everyone knows where you're going to be. So if they're angry at you, if you took money from their security deposit, or you're not giving them a credit for something they think they deserve, or they're having a conflict with their neighbor and you're not, if there's anything that they're angry at you for, they know exactly where you are, when you're going to be there, how long you're
Um,
going to be there, and they know where to find you. So that's kind of just like a generalized scary thing. And definitely had some scary instances like that. But the scariest that I can remember is we had, sorry, if this is kind of a long-winded story, but we had an older woman who had cancer, and she was going out of state for treatments. And when she went out of state, she passed away.
um,
And which we figured out by the, she always paid her rent on time, and she wasn't answering the phone. And then looking up, we found her obituary online. And so we go, there's steps in place that you have to take when a tenant passes away during a lease. And so we were taking those steps and posting notices on the door to go in and enter. And then we realized that her grandson, who was an adult, her grandson, had taken over the apartment, and he was bad news. And he was dealing drugs out of the apartment. just bad. He was stealing packages from the neighbors. So, so they told us, and just bad news. And so we, posted a file for an eviction. Another situation with an owner that really needed his hand held. He did not want to evict this person. He was just, a kind-hearted person. We were telling him everything that was going on. It took him forever. But we finally got to the point of eviction. And because it had taken so long, he did not believe like that the notice on the door, the 24-hour notice on the door, was real. And so we show up with the sheriffs and everything. He was still in there. He had mood buddies in. They had not made any effort to leave at all. And yeah, so doing, most of the time when we do evictions, people aren't living there anymore. But this time he was still living there. And so that was a scary situation. We were thankful it was during COVID, so we had masks on so you couldn't see us. But that wasn't even the scariest part. We go back to do the trash out, 2 days later or whatever it is. And normally during an eviction, you make sure all the windows and doors are locked. And so I said, hey, the sheriff was there. I said, let me go in and make sure all the windows and doors are locked so no one can get back in. And it was getting to be a bad situation. The guy was becoming irate. The cops just wanted everyone to kind of be gone. And the place was packed full. So he's like, there's so much stuff in the way, you're not even gonna be able to get to the windows. Let's get you out of here. And so we went to do the trash out to get rid of all these belongings a few days later. And the guy had moved back in. And so we didn't go in, but we're getting back in the car. And this is a multifamily property. It was like a condo situation, so separately owned buildings and units. Our owner owned about 12 units in one building there. We're getting back in the car and we hear yelling. And we look behind us in the car, my other property manager and I, and this building that we did not manage, it wasn't under our company, totally different owners. Two people were standing outside with huge guns, middle of the day, and just like fighting, like yelling at each other with these two. I mean, like, I don't know what type of gun it was, but very large guns, both of them. And so we were just like, get out of here, get out of here. And, called the police. And then we had to come back to the property to meet the trash out guys. But the tenant was still there. So it was all a mess. But that part with the big guns, that was just terrifying. And so we ended up dropping that property. I was like, that, it's next to a property. We can't manage what they're doing over there, but it's bad stuff and we can't be by that.
Wow. Gosh, there sounds like they had eviction going on over there too, or something.
Oh my God, something was going on over there. We got out of there. We got out of there quick.
So my next question was, what was an example of your most hardest tenant to actually deal with? But I bet it was the one who the grandmother died and the grandson like took over the place.
Well, after that eviction, we ended up just we call it firing the owner, but saying like, look, it's not in our best interest to be managing this property. And you gotta, it's unfortunate, especially for the owners, but we have to take our safety, it has to be a priority. So, that was a difficult situation. I would say one of the hardest we just went through recently is we had a tenant pass away inside one of the units. And so I've dealt with a lot of tenants passing away, but not necessarily inside the units. And luckily we did not find her. But I know that's I feel like that's a rite of passage for a lot of property managers. It's a common thing. But that's a sad thing, and having to then talk to the family and deal with the family coming to get the belongings. And one thing that was unique about this situation was she had two cats, and they were very skittish and we spent over a month trying to get these cats out of the apartment. So we were there leaving food and water every day, trying to find, we talked to animal services and they just were too backed up. They couldn't help us. I contacted every wildlife rescue in the area, and all of them were saying, oh, we deal with like possums and raccoons, not cats. And to me, I'm like, this seems easier. This seems like an easier job than a possum or raccoon. But then finally we got animal control finally came back and said, okay, we have availability now. And we set traps. And again, they didn't take to the traps right away. And then one did, the other didn't. So just, on top of dealing with the tenant that had passed away, dealing with the remains of the tenant that had passed away, dealing with the family of the tenant that had passed away, all the laws in place of the belongings of the tenant that passed away. Then there were these cats that were just impossible to get out. But that's actually just wrapping up now. So we're happy about that. But that was a rough situation.
Yeah, I would never think about cats. I mean, I have cats too, so I imagine, and they hide. So if anybody came, if something like
They
that
had,
happened,
yes.
you wouldn't be able to catch them. I mean, it's really hard. You have to put the traps, and then, like you said, that's not always like predictable.
Yeah, and that it might have been a different situation if they hadn't just dealt with their owner passing away,
Yeah, they
in
were
front of them. They might have been friendlier, but I'm
traumatized.
sure, yeah, exactly, traumatized and just skittish. And but yeah, that was a tricky situation.
I say so. So lately, I've been seeing a lot of liability issues with,
Mhm.
tenants and their landlords, or like guests of tenants, and their landlords. And it's been like various things. Some examples are dog bites, um,
Ooh, yeah,
cat
it's a big one.
scratch. Yeah, dog bites is a big one. Cat scratch, that one didn't really go through because it's like, what are you talking about? Another one, there was like drywall, like a company came to repair a piece of drywall on the ceiling and something happened and it fell on somebody and cut them, hurt them.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yes, slip and falls in the shower, slip and falls on cracks on the sidewalk. And then the
Slip fall
most
in the shower. That's so interesting
Yeah,
to
she
me.
felt, I would like every day I go in there, I'm like, I don't want to fall,
That's why I'm like this. How do you
something
figure?
gets the soap or something, on the bottom of it, oil or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a common thing. You can fall in the shower. And if you're an elderly person, you need like a bar, or you should be taking a bath
Yeah.
or have like a shower chair. And then recently I had a client get a really weird, like lawsuit letter from a lawyer, and they wanted 400 and something thousand dollars, and it didn't really specify what they were saying their exact
Yeah.
damages. They were like, oh, you didn't reply to this, you didn't reply to that. There was some issue with like washing machine not being hooked up correctly, and then water backed up into the house, but they never really specified what happened. And then so the insurance company's like, we're just confused. We don't know. So then we go get like the court record documents, and it's
Yeah.
like all this stuff. And then they filed a hearing, and it was said something about unlawful like eviction or something, but we didn't see in there any eviction something. So we start reading through it, and it's all this like back and forth, like he said this and they said that, and then the property manager said they were going to change the locks and lock them out, and I'm like,
Oh my
oh,
God.
but there was no like documentation or text messages. So I guess the insurance company is trying to put it under tenant discrimination. So, have you ever dealt with anything such as any of the above?
Yeah. So as far as just, lawsuits in general, luckily and knock on wood, we haven't seen kind of like an uptick in our company. But I do know just with AI lately and chat GPT, if a tenant has a minor inconvenience or just a major inconvenience or slip in the shower,
Yeah.
they look up, how can I sue for this, what law does this break, how is this wrong, how is this discrimination? And I think AI is wonderful for so many things, but in that instance it'll kind of shape it to what you ask. So it'll say, oh yes, I was
Yeah.
wrong because of this, and tell you exactly why. And one thing that's funny is we'll get, not even from lawyers, so many tenants now are sending letters with like legalese. And we know that that's all they did was type it into ChatGPT. And we know because we'll look over what they're reading, and there's like 10% of it that makes sense for what they're saying, but the 90% of it proves what they're trying to do wrong. And so that, I think AI is a wonderful thing. We use it and so much for our business, for our personal life, so much. But that is something we've been seeing is a lot more tenants are sending, instead of getting lawyers themselves, they're trying to scare you
Mhm.
prior to that by saying, oh, here's the law and here's how you're breaking it. And here, and luckily we, have our lawyers on retainer and just send it to them and they're like, no, wrong. And you're doing the right thing. As far as just lawsuits that we've seen, we've seen the dog biting, we've seen discrimination, ESAs is a big, 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 big one. Falling under discrimination and people, owners don't want pit bulls at their property and owners don't want aggressive breeds dogs at their property. And people have these ESA certifications and there's websites that'll give it to you for, $20 that's fake and tenants will use it so they can have a pit bull or so they don't have to pay their fees. And that's a big one. And we have, resources to kind of help out with that. But that's probably the biggest kind of like lawsuit thing that we come across is the ESAs. That's just been a hot topic the past few years.
Yeah. How do you handle that with the dogs? Do you charge additional, obviously for the pet fees, they pay that, but do you charge additional or do they have to provide you proof of insurance for the actual animal?
So if it's a service animal of any kind, whether that's an emotional support animal or service animal or anything like that, you can't charge any fees. So you can't charge pet fees, pet deposits, any monthly pet rent, anything like that, because it's not a pet. And so we use a source called petscreening.com and I've been using them for years. They're really, really great. And so they will they have, if it is, everyone has to do an application on there. So if you have no pet, there's a no pet application and you just fill out, legally testifying that you do not have a pet. And so that way, if you get a pet in the middle of your lease and we find that out, we're like, hey, well, you testified right here that you don't have a pet. And then there's a pet application where, let's say you have a beagle, which I use because I love beagles, but you have a beagle or a cat, whatever it may be, you just put it, it asks for their vet records and have they bit, do they have insurance, all this stuff. And we keep that on file every year. They have to update it, the vet records and everything for the pet. And there's a fee for that application. And then for any type of service animals, there's no fee, no anything, but you do have to submit documentation proving that it is a legitimate service animal or a legitimate emotional support animal. And that's another thing with like liability that removes the liability and it's on this pet screening website. We don't tell a tenant or an applicant what documentation we need or what's real or what's not. We just say, hey, fill out this application. And that kind of handles it for us. And then the pet screening will come back and say like, yes, this is, this is recommended, this is legit, or no, they can go back to the applicant and say, we need additional documentation. This letter from your therapist is expired, so we need an updated one or whatever it may be.
Oh, okay. So that's good to know that they have something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's been a huge help. That's been kind of a recent in the last few years.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of a property manager because everybody else, regular landlords would be like, oh, well, they gave it to me, but you can get it online, but they don't have a way to check if it's legitimate and they don't have the way
Mhm.
legally that you have for them to do that, like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've had owners that say like, no, absolutely no to that breed of dog. And if it's, not a pet, we kind of tell them the laws and what they can and can't do. And if we weren't there to kind of bridge that could end up in a very big lawsuit for them, and which we've seen get very expensive. And so yeah, definitely good thing to have a property management in that respect.
Yeah. So could you share your contact information for, property owners and what type of properties you accept currently to
Yeah,
manage?
absolutely. So as far as what we accept, we do the bulk of what we do is single family homes. We also do kind of similar that boutique multifamily property. We have a few of those and that can be as small as a duplex, triplex, quad or up to 30, 40, 45 units. Those smaller multifamily properties. And as far as the contact information, so Markle Management is the company name. Our website, Markle Management FL, like Florida, FL.com. Email is marklemanagementfl@gmail.com. And then everything, bulk of everything comes through my personal cell phone number. I'm pretty hands-on with everything in the company. And that is 954-465-4719.
Awesome. Well, this was like so informative. So I really appreciate it because I really needed like a refresher. I didn't know any of this. So I needed to learn it. So when I'm talking,
Yes.
I can be knowledgeable about it. So I appreciate it.
Yes.
And then um,
Absolutely.
hopefully we can meet again soon in
Yes.
person. And then I can get you some, hopefully some business and some clients out of this. So
And
thank
same
you.
to you. Same to you. It's so funny that, I was speaking to that owner of that Orlando house or Belle Isle house, and he was like, we have an inspection coming up. I'm going to connect you with Colleen. I was like, I know Colleen.
I
It
know when
just
he
is
did,
so
I was like, oh, yeah,
funny.
that's great. I'm like, I know her. So then it just made
Yes.
it easier because, these clients, like they travel a lot and they're not there. And I'm just like, if you can give somebody the access, meet them or let them in,
Oh
like
yeah,
you
and
just
he definitely was not local. He was
never, yeah, he's never here. So I'm like, you need somebody to do this. So yeah. So
Yeah.
thank you. So thank you again. Thank you for your time. And I hope all your babies went down to sleep.
Oh, they're not sleeping, but hopefully I don't hear them. I really hope you don't hear them because they're
I
so
don't
crazy
blame
noises
them.
going
They're
on.
having a good time. It's so
Yes,
early.
they sure are. They're living their best life. But yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad. I know we talked about this a while ago. I'm glad we were able to do it. And thank you
Yes,
for accommodating my late schedule to
of
get the children at
course.
least in their
Anytime.
rooms. Thank
Thank you.
you. Have a
Bye.
great night.
You
Bye.
too. Bye. Thank you so much for listening and joining us on our podcast episode that's posted bi-weekly. Again, we would love if you would like and share and subscribe to our podcast. It means the world to us and it helps our guests so much. Remember, if you would like to join us, you can do so at any time. We record in person or on Zoom anywhere in the world. Also, our podcast is produced by Sean Spazzato and it's hosted by me, Miss Colleen Pacheco. Please like and share our Facebook pages, which is Colleen Pacheco and Secured Insurance Group. Our Instagram is Colleen Insurance Lady 22, and our cover art is edited by Norma Pacheco. We appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.